Hello, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a very fun video. I'm going to be doing my top books of 2020. You know, as you get older, it's kind of like GCSE English literature kind of ruins reading for you, and then you're like, I've read the same book 10,000 times, like reading is kind of a chore now. But with these books, I feel like they can help you with medicine, they can help you with your worldview. When you think of non-fiction, the main books that I would be reading is just textbooks. So yeah, shout out to OCR biology. But no, yeah, there's a lot of different non-fiction books I really enjoyed, and particularly like memoirs and reflective books have just really helped see the perspective in people's lives, like Michelle Obama's Becoming, and Mindy Kaling, a comedian's book, where she just kind of talks about her struggles in life. So it's good to kind of read about people's memoirs and stuff so that there's a bigger world perspective. So my first initial favourite book of 2020 is Also Human by Caroline Elton, and this was the first book that really helped me to just be into the energy of reading, because yeah, I was still like in the zone of reading for just education and not for leisure. I actually challenged myself in summer to do like reading books for a week. I ended up not uploading it, but because the files kept corrupting. But anyway, when I read this was like my first break into reading, and having all this A-level fiasco mess with my med school place and etc. It was really helpful to see how doctors were also struggling. So Caroline Elton is a psychologist for doctors, and she like made her own company to help doctors, because you know it's quite hard for the doctors to relate to other doctors because they've seen a lot worse in their work. Like with psychiatrists, they've seen people going through a lot harder things, so they can put themselves down. But reading Also Human by Caroline Elton just really had loads of different aspects of how doctors are suffering and how it can be fixed. So the main focus of the book was about foundation year doctors, so when they've just come out of medical school and then they have their exams and then they get placed into a deanery. So one of the things she raised is that if someone doesn't have a competitive application and then they end up in a really far away deanery from where all their family is, where their support is, they very often struggle, and yeah, it was quite intense to read, but I think it really gave me that perspective, which was good, and highlighted how things are changing. Each of her factual statistics were always backed up with her individual patients, her doctors who were her patients, and just hearing their stories, their individual stories, was really impactful, because you know, you hear a doctor, you know, like frontline workers, but it's like, how are they behind closed doors, like once they're at home processing everything that's happened. So that was a really powerful book for me to read, and just kind of give me that perspective that, you know, it's really going to be a hard career as a doctor, and they're struggling. And to be honest, there needs to be a lot of provision for doctors. The suicide rate for doctors is really high, so yeah, there definitely needs to be more people like Caroline Elton to raise this alarm. And it was a really good read as well. Just the way it was written was really engaging, and I read it in like 3 days, which was good, going from having done absolutely nothing. One of the more enjoyable books I read was Trust Me, I'm a Junior Doctor by Max Pemberton. Yeah, he's written loads of books, and this is one of his earlier ones in 2008 when he was coming out of medical school and into foundation year doctor as his first job. So this was kind of like a memoir of his time in hospital and like rotating in different wards for the 6 months, and it was just really crazy, and it was really funny. It was like really relatable, except, you know, I can't relate, but it really brings you through a lot of emotions. Like there's a lot of, I would say, corruption, but like just bad things happening, like with the hierarchy of the workers, like the consultants and the juniors, like the overworked nurses. Yeah, I guess if you're looking for anything to put in your personal statement, this is really good, because it shows the realistic side, the kind of bad side, the social side, all of those sides, that it's not just the glamorous stethoscope, you know. So that was really good. This being from 2008 was really good, because that was when there was all the issues with the pay and the wage for junior doctors being really bad, and to be honest it still is, but it's good to see how things have improved slightly. You know, things like this really help that to change. So he's living with his colleagues, and then they become friends, and it's just like the long progression. Also them struggling with thinking, should I leave medicine, like, because it was so intense and so many bad things happened, and then they'd have like scientists come to them with dinners and offering them better jobs. It was really good to see that like perspective, the realistic struggle, you know? So moving away from medicine, more into the path of just education. Educated by Tyra Westover was crazy, and I think this is what really helped me to pick up the reading as well. It was like a memoir of her life. So she's a Mormon from a really big family, and her dad has like mental illnesses, so he's really paranoid with life. So they all live in like the mountains with doomsday, like food buried, like water buried, and they just live off the land, and they are not educated. It's to the extent where her siblings, she has 7 siblings, and 4 of them don't have birth certificates, they don't have medical records, like they don't exist in the civilized society. It's just kind of like that different way of living from the dad's paranoia, and how they were brought up in a really strict world where they were doing dangerous work like scrapyarding vehicles, and the mother is a holistic natural midwife, so the dangers of giving birth, it was just a lot. It was crazy. So her brother has a learning disability which makes him violent with her, from her rebellion as she grows older. It wasn't really rebellion, it was things like wearing trousers instead of a skirt, but seeing that like dynamic was quite like worrying, but I guess it's good to hear that reality people live through. It's all based on a real story, and Tara goes from her original life to being educated. It really just gave me appreciation for learning and how much of a privilege that is, and just seeing how she went from not having an education basically to one of the best universities in the world was really powerful. The way it was written was just like so engrossing. Like her life in her parents' Mormon community was crazy. I definitely say to read this. This was like a good one for 2020 because it just kind of gave me that perspective. Like 2020 isn't it, but this book wasn't it either. So it just really was great to see how she overcame all of her struggles and made it out. She made it out of the farm. My last favourite book of 2020, The Salt Path by Raynor Winn. And basically the preface of this book is that before they had a farm, they had the house on the farm, they had some holiday homes on the farm, until they fell into debt, which was not their fault. They were lied to and they fell into debt, and then the debt was so severe that they lost their entire home, all of their earnings, and they were homeless. Raynor Winn's husband Moth was also diagnosed with a really intense degenerative disease. So it's like they're homeless and dying and aging. In hindsight, I was kind of reading some intense books, but anyway, when they were young they used to go hiking, and they had always had on their bucket list that they wanted to do the Salt Path, which is like a walk around like all of England. They walked 630 miles along the coast of England in the rain, the snow, the heat, like it was crazy, and all while having a degenerative disease which was causing pain, and not having any money because they were homeless and struggling to have banks with like £30 a week like allowance or something. They were sleeping in their tent and eating noodles because that was all they could afford for 630 miles, and just reading all of their encounters with everyone and how they were such giving people even though they had nothing. It was just crazy and really enriching to read. Like the stories of their tales of the walk was just so crazy. Like I did Duke of Edinburgh, which is like a walking expedition, so even me just walking like for a few hours with a massive bag was just crazy, but like for them to do it for absolute weeks and out of necessity because they had nowhere else to be was just really intense. A great read, and it kind of made me want to go back into hiking, walking, exercising, and just hearing the end, the great end was just fantastic. Like they did it, they're free. By the end they were able to improve their lives, improve their situation, and it was just like so amazing to see how that accomplishment affected them and helped the health of the father. I hope this video has been interesting, that you could have some books to read in 2021 if your resolution is to read more. I definitely recommend it, and once you get into a good book, it's like you get into the flow, you know, and it's just like you're just reading, like The Salt Path was really long, but I read it in like a couple days. And like some books, it's like they keep you up. You're really enjoying the book and you just kind of keep going. Like the hardest part is starting, you know? So hopefully these books have inspired you, and if you like this kind of book video, definitely comment down below, because I love watching like booktube for recommendations. So yeah, thanks for watching and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!